Well, yeah, that was one of the things that I appreciated so much when you were here last time, is you were continually driving people to the website and saying, give us your opinions, tell us what you think, we want your input. And, right now that seems to be so much in the last, since the election, since the inauguration, it seems to be really the way that hopefully government will be going. Much more participation, much more input from the people who are most affected by what you're talking about.
Well, and one of the things, these snapshots, the strategy research we're doing that's all up on the website, we say they're going to be draft until the plan's done, because we want people to comment on them. We want people to tell us where we're wrong. Where we've gotten it wrong and what we've gotten it wrong at, how we make it better, how we make the points that we're trying to make, and really how that leads into the right kind of decisions. That's really what it's all about, is getting everybody involved in how do we make the right kind of decisions here in this region.
It's exciting. It's an opportunity, I think, to participate, as I said a moment ago, and to give input, as you said, into the way that this region will shape up for future generations.
Right.
Instead of being on the bus, we're sort of giving us an opportunity to be driving the bus.
Absolutely. Or at least telling us how to drive the bus and standing on behind our shoulder. This, as we said, this plan doesn't get done because CMAP says it needs to get done. It gets done because our residents feel this is the right way to go. And so it's not up to us to tell people this is the way. It's up to us to have a conversation about what that way is. And we really need all of our residents to have the opportunity, whether it's in small group meetings, whether it's through our website, whether it's through other mechanisms, to tell us what they think, to tell us what they care about, and to tell us the best way that they think we ought to go.
Yeah, so as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about this, that's got to be really, when you said, what did you say, linguistically isolated?
Isolated households.
So then I'm thinking, okay, so what does knowing that do for a community? Well, maybe they need more after-school programs, so that there's homework help because they can't get that homework at home. Okay, so now does that impact? Should the library be offering that? Should the school be offering that? Is it part of Parks and Recreation? I mean, what you're really doing is sort of food for thought for every agency in the region, saying, "This is the situation. What can you do about this?" Or what?
And that's, Karina, that's exactly what we're trying to do with this plan, is to make some recommendations, because most plans in the past, they've looked really nice. They might have won some awards, and they sit on a shelf, and nobody ever reads them.
Wow, what a great plan!
Yeah, and nobody seems to care. This plan ultimately will be much more about a strategy on how to get things done. So to use that same example, what we're going to say is, here's the need. And then not just stop there, but say, these are the mechanisms that we think we need to do it. Whether it's through libraries after school, whether it's through actual after school, or whether it's how do we all work together to solve this one part of the problem. So it's not just saying, as many plans did, here's the problem. It's saying, here's how to solve it, here are the ways to do it, here's what it's going to cost, because nothing is free.
Right.
And here's maybe where the money could come from, or here's the trade-offs we can make in funding this and rather than that.
Right. This is what we don't need anymore.
Right.
This is something we used to have, and now we don't need that anymore. So now the monies could go in this direction.
So what are the priorities for this region? How do we want to spend limited tax dollars, because we're never going to have enough money to do everything that we need to do. So how do we make those trade-offs? Those are really important conversations, not just for elected officials or planning people to have, but for our residents to have. What's really important to them?
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty about Go To 2040 and our agency as a whole, is that we have an eagle-eye view of all the issues that are going on. But the wonderful thing is that each community has its own way of dealing with issues, and that's what we don't try to assume. That's why we want to go out to these communities and find out what works, what doesn't work, and how, as an agency, we can bring that information back to help make those decisions of priorities.
Right.
It's so exciting. As I'm sitting and I'm listening to you, it's very stimulating to be thinking about, I'm thinking about in some communities we've had the schools have provided, for example, the free lunch program or the breakfast program, because there's been an awareness of kind of a nutritional deficit at home.
Right.
Then the question is, I'm thinking about the Latino families that I know, I'm thinking, is that actually the case, even in poor Latino families? My stereotype is that might not be it might not be an issue. They may be eating really well because it's such an important part of the culture. So then I'm thinking, okay, so what if some of that money was moved over, and what if there was more? Maybe if there's a a counselor who's the college liaison or what And so it really I can understand how you get people thinking about okay, not the needs that we've sort of grown accustomed to, but let's look at the actual situation.
Right.
And I think, I can ask you, is it realistic to say what's happening in the Latino community is sort of the predictor and the precursor for how it's going to be? I mean, is there going to be enough Latinization or enough input? Do you think so?
I think that's possible, and maybe even likely. I think you've hit it exactly right when you said, what we've done in the past maybe is in the past. And an agency like ours that doesn't have a vested interest in this program or that program can take a look at it and say, okay, this was important in the 50s or the 80s. But
or when this region was of a different ethnicity.
Right. But maybe that's not the problem we should be trying to solve anymore. And so what are those problems we should be trying to solve? How do we ensure that the resources are there? And what trade-offs do we have to make to get that? Because it is important to take that step back and say, what's working and what isn't?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, too, it's easy to get lost in sort of the national issues. And I think for this region, Latinos have contributed a lot positively to the region. And growth in home sales, were most part due to Latinos buying homes. There were certain things, the job market, had it not been for Latino workers, there'd be actually a deficit, or I guess it would be lowered. But due to Latino workers, it actually jumped the region's numbers in terms of employment. So there's certain things that are definitely happening positively, but doesn't mean that we don't need to address those things that are causing this particular community to be affected negatively.
Interesting. So is there a website where we can go and see the plan as far as
Absolutely.
it's got the most recent draft?
The most recent draft, and it's www.go2040.org is the plan's website. www.cmap.illinois.gov is our general website, but all of the and you can connect either way. But all of the information that we're doing, all of the research, all of the conversations, all of the blogs that we have going on are all through our go2040.org website, and we really encourage people to just browse around, find things that they're interested in, and tell us what they think. That's what this is all about.
Right.
This is like democracy at its finest.
Well, thank you. We hope so.
Really, and the only thing that to me, and I'm very honored to have you here, is I just hope everybody knows about it. That it's one of the things in the great competition out there for our attention.
And I should mention too, every document that we have explaining the plan is not only available in English, but we also translated it into Spanish. So it's all available again on the website. Go to www.go2040.org.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank both of you so much for being here. It's always a great conversation when you come.
Well, thank you. I look forward to having it again.
Oh, okay. I'll make a note of that for my plan. I want to thank my guests, Randy and Deanna, for having joined us this evening. Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN TV. If your not-for-profit organization would like to use CAN TV services, call us at 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune in to Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. here on CAN TV 21. I'm Karina. Thank you for joining us.